We know that the first 4 chapters were a really good descriptive review of what they've gone through. Moses talking to the new generation pretty much brought them up to speed as to what they went through the wilderness. And then chapters 5 through 28, which we kind of got midway through last week, are pretty much Moses going through the law and reiterating everything that God has taught him and told him from Mount Sinai to this new generation. And so as we get through that, chapters 29 and 30, Moses has some predictions. We'll kind of go over that, a little overview of that. And 31 through 34 is kind of like the appendix, kind of like the closing, where Moses gives a warning, but he also gives a song, and then he gives some blessings. And then finally we get the ending there of Moses' time on earth. So we're going to have some unresolved questions, and that's fine, because the Bible will answer the rest. We'll just patiently read through it. But the Torah will leave us with some questions as to what's going to happen next, because it will end with Moses ascending a mountain there for his final days. But we'll see what happens next, like I said, in the book of Joshua. So we'll be happy to continue reading through that. But let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. So we had Israel's history after Exodus, and when they were wandering through the desert, and Moses goes through that in great detail. And like I said, these are just my notes, but I'm happy to email them to anybody that wants to just provide your email to me, and I know I'll get those to you.
Okay.
I don't know if I got numbers to you too. I'll make sure and get them all sent to you.
Numbers.
Yeah, so I'll send you after service today. I'll make sure to get you numbers and Deuteronomy.
All right.
But no matter, even if I had the time to sit and read the entire book of Deuteronomy to anybody, what I have learned myself and what has been such a joy to me is just how powerful it really is to read it yourself. And so I have to make that part important. If nobody has had the time to read through the entire book themselves, when you read it yourself, it speaks through you in a way that just kind of, it's just like painting a picture in your mind and in your heart. And so I understand now that all the years that I've listened to Pastor Wayne and to Miss Jan and Pastor Mike and my mother and Leanna and Aunt Doris and everybody over the years, I've learned so much, and it's very good and very helpful. But I just learned how powerful it is to read the Word yourself. It's extremely, extremely important. So it'll never do justice for me to talk about my own opinions about things or my own feelings towards the things I've read until you read it yourself, and you'll just have the living Word just go right through you. It's so great. But I will try to get a lot of reading in, because I love to dive into the Word and just let the Word speak through me. So I'll quickly just review what we went through. But chapters 3 and the conquests and Israel was urged to obey the law. Moses recalls God's covenant again. He continues to ask them to obey, because he's telling them, like, hey, I've done my whole part. I've obeyed God to my fullest extent, and even when I've messed up, I've fallen short like everybody else. But God provides me mercy, and I know that God provides me mercy, and I know He will take me up to be with Him. But he's warning them, he's warning this new generation, and he tells them that God's gracious with them, but He does give them a choice. He says, if you follow God and you listen and obey His words, you will be blessed, and if you don't, there's going to be other kind of things happening in your life and things of consequential nature. So we went through. He recounted the time that he came down and saw their shortcomings when they were disobeying, and they had their idol worship moment there, and he broke the tablets. And and then he was given the second set, and then he tells them about the land of milk and honey in Deuteronomy 11. And we were talking about how God will send the rain and bless, but he can also close it. He can also take it away. So he can bless the land and let things grow and flourish, but you disobey, he can also close off that rain and from the heavens. And so that's kind of where we left off last week. And I want to dive into chapter 12 of Deuteronomy, starting there, and we will quickly get through some of these laws because I'd love to spend most of my time towards the end today to go ahead and read quite a bit, if not the full chapters of some of the books towards the end there. So in chapter 12, he's I'll just begin with verse 2. Ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess served their God upon the high mountains upon the hills and under every green tree. And ye shall overthrow their altars and break their pillars and burn their groves with fire. And ye shall hew down the graven images of their gods and destroy the names of them out of that place. So I believe what this is kind of telling me is he's gotten to the point to where he's talking about destroying the places of idol worship. If I'm not mistaken, there's already people inhabiting this land, this promised land, and there's people doing some bad stuff. They're obviously not worshiping the God of Israel, and he's telling them, hey, when you get into that land, rid this stuff with fire. Just don't even give it a second thought. So that's what that was telling me. But definitely read through there and let that speak to you, because there's a lot to chapter 12. It goes into the holy foods and how God wants them to eat those foods, and then he goes into the false prophets to be destroyed in chapter 13. And to shun idolatry. So in chapter 13, I'll read through, let's read verse 3 here. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God proveth you to know whether ye love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Ye shall walk after the Lord your God and fear him and keep his commandments and obey his voice, and ye shall serve him and cleave unto him. And that prophet or the dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he hath spoken to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, to trusteth thee out of the way which the Lord thy God commanded thee to walk in. So shalt thou put the evil away from the midst of thee. And he uses those words quite a few times in the book of Deuteronomy, to put the evil away from the midst of thee. So they have to do some cleanup. They're going to have to get into this land, and they're going to have to do some cleanup. There's some bad people, and there's bad things that these people have worshipped and put all this, all these false gods, they put their energy into that, I'm assuming, and this stuff has to go. So there's some cleanup there that has to be done. And in Deuteronomy 14, it continues with that, and it talks about the clean and the unclean animals, and how not to disconfigurement yourself. So let's read one.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah, sure.
Ryan, when you say disconfigurate yourself, what is that?
Well, let's go ahead and read.
In more detail.
Yeah, verses 1,
Okay.
14:1. Ye are the children of the Lord your God. Ye shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God, and the Lord hath chosen thee to be a particular people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. So it doesn't get into too much detail. To me, it's just saying, I'm assuming that some of the people that were already there, maybe they made markings on themselves, or kind of made scars, or maybe cut little images or something. I don't really know if you guys have more.
So are we talking more about like people nowadays that they do the tattoos, the piercings?
That might be a modern form of it. A lot of people have done a lot of weird things, even to like make brands, on their skin where they'll burn images that are just permanent at that point. They'll have a scar in certain images. Like I'm assuming they believed, that they were believing in false gods to begin with,
Right.
and maybe they were feeling like they were being told to do certain things that disconfigurated themselves. But I believe the basic message here from God is to say, have no part in that. Don't mess up the body, the temple that I've given you. I mean, that's what it says to me. So I don't believe it gets into too much detail just in those two verses. You can read through the rest, and then it starts to go through in verse 3. It starts to talk more about the animals. So I'll read it. It says, "Thou shalt not eat any abominable thing. These are the beasts which ye shall eat: the oxen, the sheep, and the goat, the hart, and the roebuck, and the fallow deer, and the wild goat, and the pygarg, and the wild ox, and the charmois." I don't even know what some of these animals are. I would have to go back and look at Hebrew and compare that to what we name these animals with modern day English, but it goes through the whole rest through verses 3 through 10, and it'll continue to go. See in verse 7 it says, "Nevertheless, these ye shall not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the cloven hoof, as the camel, and the hare, and the coney, for they chew the cud, but divide not the hoof. Therefore they are unclean unto you." So I don't know that, I myself don't know how much of the laws of the people of Israel apply to people today. Obviously, ear piercings, for example, are very, very, very common these days. And people eat pork, and people, eat duck or rabbit. There's a lot of stuff out there. And as we know, we're all sin natured from the beginning anyway, and it's only Jesus that's going to save us. There's nothing we can do. If we followed all these laws to a T, there's still nothing else that's going to get us into heaven. So I don't think the focus for us today, it's more educational, I believe. Not that it's bad, and not that you shouldn't obey.
This is the law, though. We are not under the
Right.
law. We are under grace.
Exactly.
So you have to remember, they had to keep this. But
Yes.
We are not under the law.
Exactly. Very well said. So, we are not bound to these same laws. This was God's chosen people, and He made these laws, like we said before, to separate them from the rest. And they were to walk this way so that everybody could see that they were set apart. It was their way of showing others that we don't do that. We listen to our Lord, and He tells us how we should act and what we should do and what we shouldn't. So 14, we'll go through that. 11 through 21 goes over the birds. And then there's some laws regarding tithing. In 15, they have the year of release, and it goes over things that they should do. At the end of every 7 years, thou shalt make a release. And this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lendeth aught unto his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. And then it goes through in a lot more detail as to what they were to do. But at the end of every 7 years, they called it this sabbatic year. And there were several things that they were supposed to do, and to help the poor, and things they were supposed to do with their herds and their flocks. You can find that in verses 19 through 23. And so it goes through all of that. That was definitely a big part of their law. And in chapter 16, as we continue through, the feasts of the Passover, or observing the Passover, they have a very detailed law in chapter 16. And I'll read one. observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto the law, or unto the Lord thy God, for in the month of Abib the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God of the flock and the herd in the place which the Lord shall choose to place his name there. And then it goes into very much detail of how they are supposed to perform this. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread therein, even the bread of affliction, for thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of the Egypt, all the days of thy life. So there were certain things that I believe it was done in remembrance, to remind them of what they went through, so that it's kind of a tradition for them to remember what the conditions kind of were, I guess, you could say, when they were coming in and being delivered in. But then they have the observing the Feast of Weeks, and observing the Feast of Tabernacles. These are very important things for them to perform and to do in chapter 16. So I encourage everybody to read over those.
They were also a form of obedience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were commanded to do these things. They needed to obey in order to receive blessings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's all, everything that's detailed here is for them to receive their blessings. And they're to obey everything that God said.
The Apostle Paul, for by grace are you saved through faith, that not of yourselves gift of works, not of works as he mentioned, boast. For we are his workmanship, created unto Christ Jesus unto good works. And I think we often like to emphasize 2, 8, and 9, but we don't like to emphasize 10.
Yeah.
And when you really, what are those good works that God requires of us? Well, you have to take the whole Bible in perspective. You can't just say only the things Paul said were wrong are wrong. Everything else is okay. If Paul didn't say it was wrong, then it's okay to do. To really understand what those good works are, you have to look at the whole Bible. And I do think that if you look at these laws, God knows exactly how to stop things before it starts.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have a hard time understanding it. When he says men should not wear women's clothing, it's hard for us to understand. What's wrong with that? Well, we know today what's wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he knows how to stop something before it ever starts.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't explain where it's going to go if you do.
Yes.
We just, and these cuttings, tattoos, all those things, they lead to things that God doesn't want.
Absolutely.
They open the door to demonic forces.
Yes.
And you have to just be so aware of that. So I don't think Paul goes into all that tattoos are going to open the door to demonic forces. But if you read the whole Bible, you see the wisdom of God.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. That is
And
great.
if he didn't like it then, I don't think he likes it.
He didn't
Absolutely.
say-
Absolutely. So, like I said, I mean, today, it's just the way of the world today, where sometimes things get so prevalent, it becomes more or less, I guess the best word is accepted. It's more accepted.
Yeah.
But just like in the times of the Corinthians, I mean, they were accepting all this stuff because it was all around them and they were doing it all until Paul got there and said, hey, what you're doing isn't right. But before somebody came and told them that, they didn't think anything wrong of it. Now, I mean, a lot of older movies will depict things like I said, and I'm not trying to condone like ear piercings or anything like that. I'm not here to do that. That's the Lord's job one day, but to decide what we did was right or wrong. But I think a lot of movies depict it pretty well, where people would put piercings in their arms or their nose, I mean, in their cheeks, their faces. I mean, they were doing all kinds of disconfigurations. So back to your question earlier, I mean, it's more than what we see today. So sometimes, like they were doing, it'd be hard to imagine what was all going on back then. But like you said, it was, sometimes those things just seem like a small thing. It seems small, but it just grows and grows and grows into this, it's like a cancerous process where it just turns into what the Lord calls many times an abomination. Because he knows the end result when we might not see it.
And you see the demonic aspect of it when you see people addicted to it.
Yes.
They cannot stop.
Well, and then, you know, well, somebody might get a tattoo, and sometimes, you know, people get tattoos that they think are very special, meaning to. I've seen people do the handprints of their babies, or the date of, you know, their mother's life or whatever, and they think that's special. People that put verses, Bible verses. You know, what am I to say about that? I don't know. I've had friends in the past. I have friends that have tattoos. I don't personally have any, but they've always, oh, Ryan, why don't you get a tattoo? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I just don't really know that that's for me, or I don't really feel like I need to do something like that. But they were like, well, you know, they'd try to talk to me more about it. And then I said, well, if I ever was to get a tattoo, I'd probably just put my favorite verses right where they were, right in front of my face all the time, and nobody could ever take that away from me.
Right.
I don't know how God would feel about that, and maybe I won't until I talk to him one day, but...
I'll go get one if you do.
Okay. But that was my answer to them, every time. If they said, well, Ryan, why don't you come get a tattoo with me? And I said, well, I got a whole bunch of verses that I would love to have right in front of me all the time, that nobody, you know, they could strip me of my clothes, my house, my family, my everything, and I guess if I was to have something marked on my body, it'd be God's Word. And they would have to graphically, you know, peel my skin to get that word off of me.
Isn't there something in the Bible, I can't remember where it is, but didn't they have something hanging off their head garments or
Yeah,
face somewhere about Bible verses?
you know,
Jesus.
I don't really know too much about all that. I know of what you're talking about, but I don't know enough to speak
Well,
on
the
it.
Pharisees did stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think it was tattooed. I think it maybe was hanging.
You know, there's but going as to what you were saying, a small thing. So it can lead to a lot of dark, bad stuff, though, too. I mean, I've seen people, you know, tattoo like a third eye or something on their forehead. Just weird images you see in movies or in
There's a
images
girl-
on the internet and stuff. And so they can use it for good or evil, I guess. Everything in this world can probably be used for God's glory or for, you know,
I was
against
talking
God.
to a girl at Chateau the other day who had Osiris on one of her tattoos. And she said, do you know what that is? And I said, yeah, that's the all-seeing eye. And she was surprised that I knew what that was. She
Wow.
said, yeah, that's pagan. That stands for the pagan god, Osiris. And I said, are you pagan? She said, no, I'm Christian, but my husband is pagan. He believes in the pagan gods.
Yeah.
So isn't that considered an unequal yoke?
It is.
It
You're
is.
not supposed to marry someone who's not a Christian.
Right.
But-
Yes. There again, it's kind of one of those things. God knows what it's going to lead to.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean you're just going to automatically be judged as soon as you do it. I mean, you might get away with it for a while, you know?
And she may think she's Christian, but what's her definition of Christian?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good question too.
There's this one girl at my job. She's got like tattoos all over her face, her arms, and everything. And she's got the piercings here, and she even went, and she was a PC. She took over my spot when I left, when I was a program manager. She went to the extreme of getting the horns started
Oh,
working.
That's got to be an
Yeah,
addiction.
and then the owner
Yeah.
of the company finally had to step in and say, if you continue with this, you're not gonna be able to.
You can't work with
Just
this.
grosses me
Because
out.
you're out in the public,
Yeah.
and, you know, you represent the company, you know, and so, yeah, she
But you
stopped
know,
out.
that
But
may
she already
change.
has them started.
You know what?
She's
That
got
may
them.
change too, though, because it used to be you couldn't get a job if you had a tattoo.
Yeah. And
Now
my
you
job
can do
still
what you don't have
requires
Oh,
bank
God.
tellers and stuff to cover them up. If they do
Yeah.
have tattoos, any visible tattoos, they're supposed to put a
Now
like
they
a
don't.
skin
Now-
tone bandage or something
But now
over
they
it.
allow them to, like, when Virginia worked at Arvest,
Mhm.
about when she was like 21 or something, but anyway, she had a few tattoos. Well, she had to wear those sleeves.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of these banks,
Yeah.
they allow you to be with the tattoos, because we have a friend of ours, she's right around like maybe a few years older than Virginia, and she works over at the Fort Sill Federal Credit Union, and she's got tattoos all on her arms, and she says they don't make her cover them anymore.
You know, you can
So-
hardly hire somebody, you know, there's
Well, now
hardly
they
anybody
can-
up there
Yeah.
that have it.
Yeah, now they can say that you're.
Prejudice or
Yeah.
something.
racist and
They do, they do, and it's still demonic.
But it's still there is, you know, rights to say, you won't work for me.
Yeah.
Well, and
At
this
least
is
in
what
this
I say,
state.
they can always say, the people that are doing the hiring, they can always say, you know, we have hired somebody with more qualifications,
Yeah.
you know, instead of saying, no, we're not hiring you because of the
Yeah.
taxes.
But can you find somebody qualified that doesn't have it? That's the question.
Yeah.
When I was going through cancer treatment, they wanted to tattoo markings on me so that when they did the radiation, they would know right where to go. And I just pleaded with them, and they let me get by without. So,
Yeah.
Because for one thing, I didn't want to have a tattoo. Second, I didn't want to be reminded of what tattoo
yeah.
represented.
But, you know, I mean, something like that, like I said, God's the ultimate judge, and I have no authority of that, but I would think that God understands every single particular situation. You know, like I said, was it done for good, or was it done with the intent of evil? Now, something like that, I don't think, you know, I mean, I think it was intended for good by the doctors, you know, but I mean, does it glorify God or not glorify God? Maybe it falls in a gray area where God is just like, it's not a big deal, you know, but I don't know that. That's obviously for him to say, but I think that almost all these things, you know, it's almost what the heart feels for it. Some people,
You're right.
absolutely there. I mean, if somebody got a tattoo of a Bible verse, but they are the most dedicated, I mean, they just love God so much, and that's just what they wanted to do, so that if they ever lost their physical copy of the book, that they just always had that with them, no matter where they went. I don't know. You know, I don't know what God would have to say. Like, you know, maybe He'd be pleased.
Ryan,
Yeah.
I think the answer to doing that is put it in your head. and
Uh-huh.
I'm thinking the same
Put it
thing.
in your heart.
Memorize it.
That's
Do
what
it
Yeah.
God
in
the
your
end
head.
times wants
Get
us
it in
to
your
do.
head and memorize it.
Okay,
That's
but-
what
But some people
Some
are
people
very
have-
good at memorizing and
Memorize
keeping it
your-
in their
Well, then-
idea.
memorize it.
there's
Get it
certain
in your
people-
noggin.
There's certain people in the world, though,
Put it in
and
your
I hope this
head
never
and
happens to me, but I'm
memorize.
already kind of worried because I forget things a lot. But then there's people that have short-term memory loss or long-term memory loss, people with Alzheimer's.
Yep.
You know, how that is one of my biggest fears, honestly. And when I heard that there was this, you know, you read stories sometimes, and this daughter will say, like, I went to go visit my mother today in the nursing home or whatnot, and she just said, well, how are you, you know, young lady, what's your name? And she just, like, you know, it just makes them break down and cry that their own mother doesn't remember them. I mean, God has a purpose for everything, and I do definitely agree with that. The best thing is to put it all in your heart and in your mind. But maybe God has different situations for different things. I'm not saying go out and
Yeah.
put the scripture in tattoos all over you, but maybe there's a reason out there for someone, and God would approve of it. Like I said, he would have to answer those questions for us.
You know, I
But
also think
it's a
we
great thought.
We should not use the Old Testament law as a means of criticizing people.
Yeah,
Like, we should always focus on loving people and accepting people, and if possible, try to teach them what the Bible says.
yeah,
You know, it's really up to them as to what they're going to do on that, but I just think it's important for us to really love. Like, I've got a Muslim neighbor, you know, I don't agree with the Muslim religion, but I try to love him. I try to let him know I'm not critical of him. You know, I would love for the love of Jesus to show something, you know.
yeah.
And you know, the same way, you know, different people have different reasons. My son got a tattoo. He did an Iron Man. He was very proud of that. He did an Iron Man tattoo on the back of his calf.
Huh.
And so people, everywhere he goes, people say, "Oh, you did an Iron Man," you know.
Yeah.
He's just really excited about that. But at least, you know, he's aware of the danger.
Yeah,
Like, I've talked to him about it, and he says, yeah, I prayed about it, I'm aware of the danger. I know it was so, it said, don't do it so that it doesn't go in the wrong direction.
Right, yeah. And I mean, there's a million, probably a billion, I don't even know how many ways there are to sin, you know?
And it's, to
but-
some extent, it's kind of like alcohol, you know, there's no actual thing in the Bible that forbids alcohol like it does tattoos, but we all know that alcohol can get out of hand.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
The
so,
Bible says in moderation.
it does say
Yeah.
moderation, it says do not get drunk.
Yes.
You know that much. So, you know, when my kids drink alcohol, well, I don't criticize that, but I don't drink alcohol, you know, I just don't do it.
One thing that always comes back to my mind is the 3 men on the cross. And who knows whatever the man did before he was saved that day, but Jesus said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And he did not
Yes.
Amen.
flinch about anything that man did throughout his entire life.
Uh-huh.
But he had faith in Jesus that moment, that time. And he said, "Why are you guys crucifying this guy? We have sinned, but he did nothing wrong."
Yeah.
And Jesus gave him all the grace just then in that one moment. Isn't that just a beautiful
Yes.
picture?
Powerful.
So you're absolutely right. We need to love everybody, regardless of what they've done. But this is very helpful information to help a Christian walk, I think. And it's very helpful to help us learn how we could best behave and how we can best be an example to others. So I love it. I love the absolute... the points made there are so great, and I love having this discussion with you all. I think we have a very blessed chapel, and our hearts and minds are all in the right place, so thank you all for that. I won't have time to finish up today, and that is perfectly fine, because like I said last week, I've been working on my patience, and that is absolutely focused, so we might have a part 5. But hey, isn't that fitting for the 5th book of the Torah? We'll have a part 5 when I get back in a couple weeks, but... I'll finish up going through a few more of these laws, and hopefully we'll get into the chapter 20s. In 17, thou shalt not sacrifice unto the Lord thy God any bullock or sheep wherein there is blemish or any evil favoredness, for that is an abomination unto the Lord. So if there be found among you within any of thy gates, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, man or woman that hath wrong wickedness in the sight of the Lord thy God, and trespassing his covenant, and hath gone and served other gods and worshipped them, either the sun or the moon or any host of the heaven, which I have not commanded, and it be told thee that thou hast heard of it and inquired diligently, and behold, it be true, and things certain that such abomination is wrought in Israel, then shalt thou bring forth that man or that woman which have committed the wickedness unto the gates, and even that man, and shall stone them with stones till they die. That is a very strongly worded section there, but it just goes to show how their law was so critical to them at this time, that God absolutely wanted no evil in that presence. So no idols, no false teachers, or any of these people that break these laws willingly. He said diligently. So there's a key word there. Maybe God had further grace with the people who didn't understand exactly what they were doing wrong, but there were some people who I believe, like you were saying, this person believed he was a pagan worshiper. There's people today that claim that they worship Satan. They have no shame in saying that. And these people are diligently turning their belief away from God. I mean, they know about Jesus, they know about God, and they choose to just defy that. So God dealt with them in special ways. In 18, it goes over the priests and the Levites' portions of their inheritance, and in verse 1 it says, "They shall eat the offering of the Lord made by fire, and his inheritance. Therefore shall they have no inheritance among their brethren. The Lord the Lord is their inheritance, as he hath said unto them." So that's interesting to note how the Levites were given this different set of inheritance laws, and we can see that in 18. And in verses 9 through 14, it goes back to when they get into the land to avoid these pagan practices. And it says, "When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations." So there's that word again. The Lord called it abominations, which I need to look up what the Webster definition of that says. But to me, that says that this has an end result that is probably death. I mean, it is so bad. It is to be rid of. But then it talks about a prophet that will rise up. And that's in verse 15. The Lord thy God will raise up thee a prophet from the midst of thee, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him ye shall hearken. Now, is that talking about Jesus, you think? Like unto me? That's very interesting words that he gives them he's dropping little hints to them, even though they won't be alive to that point in history. But it's just interesting how every once in a while he sprinkles in those little hints.
You know, Ryan, that's actually why they came to John the Baptist and said, "Are you a prophet? Are you the prophet?
Are you the prophet?
Are you the one that was promised?"
That's very interesting. They've heard that he's coming. 19 goes over the cities of refuge. That was an interesting reading. There's these cities, I guess, that were set apart for people who have done certain acts. You'll have to read through those in detail because it gets pretty descriptive of these people who have done accidental killings or people who have done more of a planned murderous thing, a meditated murder, if you will. So that's going to be found in Deuteronomy 19. To me, reading through that, it was just unbelievable how you could almost take all of these laws and put them into the courtroom today. I mean, it is very interesting how all this was written so long ago, yet applies so well even to this day, that if people just followed these laws right here, you almost wouldn't need the books and 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 stuff that they came up with these days. But anyways.
How you apply that is very, very interesting because, you know, families had the ability to administer justice back in the Old Testament. Like if somebody did something wrong, if somebody killed one of their sons, they had the authority to go kill them. And so a person who was under that situation, they could run to the city of refuge, and there they would wait for a trial. The priest would be there in the city of refuge. They would have a trial, and if they were considered that it was actually accidental, then they could stay in the city. If it was considered they did it premeditatively, they were kicked out of the city, and they had to face their own judgment.
Right.
You know, so only if you were innocent could you stay. It's kind of like a manslaughter situation.
Yeah.
Where, okay, you stay in jail for manslaughter, but you're not considered, you don't have the death penalty.
Right. Yeah.
It's very similar to our
It
situation
is.
today, where the city of refuge was kind of like a jail, and they stayed there until the high priest died, and then they could go out.
Absolutely. I think it was very interesting that they detailed all of this because I just feel like God didn't miss anything in these laws. He touched on every situation that they could possibly run into at that time. And even, it almost covers almost any situation you could run into today. Even as complicated and busy as this world is, that's where I feel like these laws could almost just cover everything today. And I think human nature today has just taken it and ran, and we've made it so much more complicated. But I think that's just part of Satan just turning this world into confusion. And then people argue over what's right and what's wrong. But if they just followed this, it's clear cut and dry. Isn't it? It's so clear cut. This is right and this is wrong. But today, there's so much confusion. But we know who the author of that is. So I will have to end here. I've gone over time, but we will pick up in 20. He goes over laws of warfare and some crimes and things. So we will pick up there when I get back. But I hope this leaves you all with a better understanding of some of these laws. Just a little quick overview. Like I said, I wish I could read a whole lot more, but thank you guys for your discussions today. I love learning everything back and forth of our discussions, and it speaks to me and helps me out so much. So thank you all.